Labour's position on Brexit is to have a second referendum, but it won't commit to how it campaigns in that referendum. What do you want to see?
Well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, the position that Jeremy Corbyn is laying before a conference this week is that when he becomes Prime Minister, he will negotiate the best deal possible, and that will respect the 2016 referendum. Once he negotiates that deal, he will take it back to the people on a confirmatory vote with Remain on the ballot paper. He's also said that Labour would recall their conference to determine what position the Labour Party will take in that vote. And that's absolutely correct. Trade unions do it every single day. We negotiate with an employer, we bring the deal back, and we make a judgment with our shop stewards normally as to whether we're going to recommend acceptance or not. Perfectly straightforward, absolutely honourable, because it is only Jeremy Corbyn and Labour who are offering the whole nation. You've got the Tories who've dismissed one half of the nation, the Liberal Democrats who've dismissed the other half of the nation. It's only Labour trying to heal and mend our broken nation during this toxic debate that we've had for 2 years.
Well, if you're the ones who are trying to bring everyone together and the others are just outriders, just look at the polls. And I accept that the polls are different, but there is a clear Conservative lead, and it's also clear that the Lib Dems are making gains on Labour. So why is it not that you're not doing better?
But Sophie, if I take you back just 2 years, the polls were indicating that Labour would be wiped out. And when the election took place, we came within touch and distance of power. In fact, commentators like yourself are unanimous in the view that if that
I'm not
election,
a commentator, to be fair. I'm an interviewer.
Sorry, if that election had have taken place an additional 2 weeks, then Labour would be in power. So what happens in an election is people listen to what Labour has on offer. Not just Brexit, there are a whole host of issues that affect ordinary working people, everyday lives, investment in their communities, investment in our manufacturing sector, protecting our public services, defending the National Health Service, giving our children, our students some hope. All of those issues will be heard by people. And I believe if Labour come out of this conference with a clear Brexit policy based on what Jeremy wants, and my appeal to all delegates is support your leader, support the NEC statement, then they will see that Labour is the only party trying to heal a broken nation.
We know that Jeremy Corbyn is going to come under pressure from members of the Shadow Cabinet, from backbenchers, to back a Remain position. Would that be a mistake?
Jeremy's already making his position clear.
But would that be a mistake?
I think the NEC statement is Jeremy's position.
Come on, would it be a mistake? I know it's easy to fall back on process here, but would it be a mistake?
Sophie, the reality is if you're going to negotiate, and there is a belief that Jeremy Corbyn and Labour could negotiate a much, much better deal, the best deal from the European Union, then you only make a judgment about what you should do in the confirmatory vote when you've got that. I believe that this conference will support that. Of course there are strong views about Remain, but when the arguments are put to conference on Monday, I believe they'll support Jeremy Corbyn. I believe the unions will, and I believe the constituencies will.
Would it be a betrayal of the many Labour leave voters to take a Remain position?
Well, that is precisely why Jeremy Corbyn is effectively trying to say, look, we have to make an offer.
What's your view here? I know what Jeremy Corbyn is. What's your view?
My view is Jeremy Corbyn's view. We said just 2 years ago, when Labour went into the general election 2 years ago, we said we were going to respect the 2016 referendum. Corbyn has been consistent in wanting to respond to the democratic wishes, but of course there has been a polarisation of views, and it's therefore absolutely correct that we should go back to a confirmatory vote with Remain on the ballot paper.
But not campaign necessarily for Remain.
Well, that will be determined when people look at the deal. I know that there is an attempt to suggest that this is a fudge or it's confusing. It isn't confusing to trade unionists. When I go into an employer to negotiate a deal, I don't say to them, well, I'm going to negotiate a deal with you, but whatever you give me, I'm going to campaign against it. I wait to see what the deal is. I take it back normally to my shop stewards, which in this case will be a recall Labour Party conference, and say, what do you think? We then make a decision as to whether we will recommend that to our members, which in this particular scenario will be the people.
We know you're close to Jeremy Corbyn. Some portray you as a roadblock to a more explicitly Remain position from the Labour leader.
I mean, again, that is fake news and it's nonsense. It's done to try and project the image that Jeremy Corbyn is weak and is influenced by people. I've never met a stronger individual than Jeremy Corbyn. All the stuff about his age and he's looking well, he's already seen off two Conservative Prime Ministers in David Cameron and Theresa May. And when we get a chance in the general election, he'll see a third of. Jeremy Corbyn is his own man. He makes his own decisions. What he does do, which is remarkable, he listens. He wants to consult widely. He wants to listen. He wants to bring people together. But the idea that anybody, any of his staff or people like me, stop him from doing what he wants is just not true.
So what's your message then to people like Emily Thornberry, people like Dame Margaret Beckett, who we just heard from, who would like to Remain?
Well, my message is to support the leader.
And do you think they're not doing that?
I support the leader. We'll see when the results of the Brexit debate comes out. I went to 5 fringe meetings last night, and I'm not a word of a lie. The support for Jeremy Corbyn is palpable in this conference. So
you'd expect that in a conference, though, wouldn't you? Come on. I mean, the real challenge is to speak outside the hall.
No. Well, the real challenge is to speak to the electorate. I accept that, but we must go into an election united. And when we have a policy on Brexit and Jeremy Corbyn makes it clear that that is the policy, then that's what leading members of the shadow cabinet should argue for. If they find that they can't argue for it because they feel strongly, well, of course they have that right, but they should step aside. They step aside from the cabinet, the shadow cabinet, which will become the cabinet, and they can argue whatever they want. But the policy and my appeal to them, to Emily and to anybody else, is support your leader. Emily Thornberry is a fantastic politician. She's been loyal to Jeremy. If we get to a position where Jeremy is saying, let's not make our decision on how we will campaign until we know what the deal, my appeal to her, support Jeremy. And that's my appeal to the whole of conference.
So you have an issue then with people coming out and saying, I'll campaign to Remain whatever happens?
If they're in the leadership. Because, of course, in this situation of the toxic nature where, you know, the Tories have dismissed one half of the country, the Liberals have dismissed the other, in order for Labour to get through their message of unity and healing our nation, everybody needs to be singing from the same hymn sheet. Now, if the leadership team, the cabinet, the shadow cabinet, soon to be the cabinet, find that difficult, then yes, they should step aside.
And would you blame them for perhaps...
Of course.
Some of the polling, you know, some of the people claiming that there's a lack of unity?
Well, obviously, at the moment, there is confusion when leaders say different things. That's why if we get a clear position at this conference, everybody should commit to it. And if they can't, I don't blame them if they want to step aside from the leadership role to argue their case. I respect that, of course I do. But there has to be one clear message coming from Labour in terms of the leadership on our policies when we go into an election.